Welcome and glad to have everyone with us all across the world. The whole crew's with us. All right, wonderful. Today's teaching, and I am departing a little bit from the weekly parshas simply because this is a topic that is very personable to so many of us. And what I am going to be dealing with are the reasons from a Torah perspective for pain, suffering, and untimely death. These are not easy topics to deal with because they are personal. They touch our day-to-day lives. I mean, who among us has not lost a very close relative, a friend, family member, and we want answers. And not all those answers are easy or forthcoming. I remember quite a few years ago listening to an interview with Bart Ehrman. He's very well known for his scholarship on the New Testament and the studies of historicity in that field. But he wrote that, or in the interview rather, he stated that the reason he became an atheist was because he looked at the world around him and he could not answer the question of how a loving God, a God who had some sort of control over humanity, was able to issue some sort of divine decree or even capable of intervening in humanity's life. Why a loving God would allow pain and suffering and death. And, he's not alone in that. I think a lot of us have struggled with that. So let me start off by saying that with this study, I certainly do not have all the answers. And I will even go so far as to say that Torah does not provide all the answers. But what the Torah does provide is enough answers that we can find our way, so that we can see a path that is clearly laid before us, and so that we can have some, I would say, logic and consistency and comfort in our belief system. So what I'm going to share with you today is basically just directly from the Torah. Now, before I get started, I want to say something that is probably a little controversial. I'm not exactly one to shy away from controversy, but I think a lot of us have really developed what I would call a God complex. And that is that we want God to magically come in and fix all of our woes. We want him to fix the strife that we have among our nation. We want him to heal our diseases. We want him to come in and just put this magic spirit-filled bubble on our society and just make everything better. Torah tells us that that isn't the way he works. That is not the way he operates. According to Torah, he has given us a way of life, a code of living. And it's not just the individual. Yes, it begins with the individual, and the individual follows it. But it takes more than that. It takes a community. It takes a society to take these ideas and turn them into a way of living for an entire nation. So there's this idea that by following this way of life, it brings prosperity, it brings peace, it brings joy and happiness, and it brings health. Deuteronomy 29 verse 9 states, "Keep the words of the covenant and do them that you may prosper." So again, it is the idea that God has given to us, a God who has the power by his own knowledge, by his own wisdom, to create the world and to do everything. I mean, how can we understand how a child is created within the womb? So a God that can create things like that in each species, reproducing according to its kind, a God that has that type of wisdom and that type of knowledge can then take that and give to us a moral code, a code of justice, and a code of healthful living that can prosper us in all of our ways. So what we're going to look at today are some of those, both the blessings for following this way of life, what those perhaps those stipulations entail, as well as the consequences. Now, what I'm going to be discussing today may not be comfortable. It may not be easy to hear. But you know, sometimes when we return to reality, when we return to a very logical and textual-based outlook on life, it provides incredible joy and incredible peace later on. So the first thing that we're going to look at are some of the promises that Scripture provides. So the first place that we're going to go to is going to be Deuteronomy 4, verse 40. The promise that is given in the Deuteronomic covenant. Now, let me just distinguish. There were two national covenants that were given in the Torah, or in the Old Testament. And these two national covenants, the first one was at Mount Sinai, when Israel had come out of Egypt within about the first 2 months. The second covenant was not made with the people that came out of Egypt, because that generation perished during the 40 years in the wilderness. The second covenant that was made on a national level was made in the Moab Plains, and it's called the Deuteronomy Covenant, or the Deuteronomic Covenant. And this was made 40 years later with the children of those that came out of Egypt. So it was a future generation. And the promise that was given in this covenant states in Deuteronomy 4, verse 40, "Keep therefore his statutes and commandments, that it may go well with you, and with your children after you, that you may prolong your days on the earth, which Yahweh your God gives you forever." So there's this idea that by following the covenant, the length of our days are prolonged. And that means in every way. It means it's prolonged as a nation, as far as conflicts that or affliction that we may face. It is also prolonged as far as health is concerned. So our days are lengthened. Another text in Deuteronomy 12, verse 28 says, "Observe and hear all the words which I command you, that it may go well with you, and your children after you forever, when you do what is right and good in the sight of Yahweh your God." So there's this idea that the Torah embraces a concept called natural law. And what that means is that the laws that Yahweh has given to us that govern the universe, he's given to that in a moral code and a justice code. And it's the idea that it is derived from the natural laws of physics or other stipulations that govern our universe. Now, as far as we are concerned, there's really about 5 classifications in which affliction falls. The first classification is going to be war and conflict. The second is going to be oppression and injustice. The third is going to be accidents, things that just happen, kind of freak acts of nature, or even say, you know, if you're driving your car and there's a car accident. The fourth is going to be famine, and the fifth is going to be disease. These are going to be the 5 that we're going to deal with today. The first item, war and conflict. These are both internal society issues as well as national issues where there is conflict between nations. The covenant that Yahweh gave to Israel promised peace. Now, Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, we're going to be looking at both of these in detail. Again, Leviticus 26 was part of the Sinai covenant. Deuteronomy 28 was part of the Deuteronomy covenant, and they were separated again by a period of 40 years. But it is incredible how one covenant completely upholds the other one. It doesn't rescind, it doesn't change the promises. In every single instance, we find that the covenants always confirm and uphold each other. So if you'll turn with me to Leviticus 26, verse 6 through 9, this is the blessing of peace that following the covenants and the promises for following those covenants that Yahweh gives to us. It says, "And I will give you peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. I will rid evil beasts out of the land, neither shall there be a sword that go through your land. You shall chase your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. For I will have respect for you, and will make you fruitful, and multiply you, and establish my covenant with you." So the first blessing that we find in the covenant is of national peace. Deuteronomy 28, verses 6 through 7 reiterate the same concept. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. Coming in and going out is usually a military context, so it's the idea that the armies are blessed in all the battles that they confront. It says, Yahweh shall cause your enemies to rise up against you, will be smitten before you, and they that come out against you will flee before you 7 ways. So again, the promise for following the covenants is peace. And there's another command that is given that enables this peace. Exodus 34, verse 23 says, 3 times a year shall all your men appear before Yahweh your God, the God of Israel. For I will cast out the nations before you and enlarge your borders, and neither shall any man desire your land when you shall appear before your God 3 times a year. Now, because we are divorced from the land, because we do not live under this type of government that God established at Mount Sinai, we tend to think of the feast as purely religious occasions. And one of the reasons, that God had the men, and it explicitly states the men in Israel appear before him, this was a show of arms. When the men came from all of the entire countryside and they converged and convened on Jerusalem, they were convening and showing a strength of arms that made other nations fear their vast population and their show of force and solidarity that could not be fractured. There were other laws within Torah that really made the nations around about Israel want to seek peace with them. Part of it really came down to the fact that Israel was just so righteous. In Deuteronomy 4, verses 6 through 8, it says, what nation on earth is there that has statutes and judgments as righteous as these? So we find that Israel offered certain freedoms, certain liberties that were really unheard of in the ancient world. Whether we look at the Hammurabi Code, whether we look at the Egyptian laws, it really doesn't matter. The one group of people that were always oppressed in ancient society were the immigrants. They were usually your lower level. They were not afforded the same rights that law-abiding citizens were afforded, except in Israel. Israel's constitution applied equally for the immigrant as well as for the native-born citizen. There wasn't this hypocrisy of law where there was one law for the native citizen and then another law for the immigrant. That simply wasn't the case. And this fact that there was a unified code of law, this unified constitution, provided incredible solidarity and incredible unity in the land. Another thing that the law prohibited, that Israel's constitution prohibited, was in Exodus 23, verse 31, it prohibited treaties with nations that lived on the land that God was giving to Israel. So the idea was that Israel was to divest them. They were to chase them out of the land and claim that for themselves and establish one law on that land so that they could have peace. It also prohibited, the Constitution prohibited Israel from seeking the welfare of its enemies. And this is something that a lot of nations could learn from today. When you seek the peace of your enemies or you strengthen them in any way, it really serves to come back around and kind of bite you in the foot, because they use your ways against you, and they will use whatever funds are given to them or whatever treaties are made. They will exploit it to their own good because they do not operate under the same value system that you operate under. Now, what is the curse or consequences for not following these statutes and these guidelines that are given in the covenant? Leviticus 26, verse 14 states, if you will not hearken to me, if you will not listen to me, and will not do all these commandments, but if you will despise my statutes, or your soul abhorred my judgments, so that you will not do all of my commandments, but that you break my covenant, I will do this to you. I will appoint over you terror. So this is the idea that God, whether he allows this affliction to occur or he actually even appoints it, for the main reason that we depart from his ways that relieve oppression. In Deuteronomy 28, verse 15, the same thing. But it shall come to pass, if you will not listen to the voice of Yahweh your God, to observe and do all of his commandments and statutes, which I command you this day, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. And if you skip down to verse 25, it says, and Yahweh will cause you to be smitten before your enemies. You will go out one way against them, but you will flee 7 ways before them. And you shall be removed until all the kingdoms of the earth, and your carcass shall be meat to the fowls of the air, and the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them. So when we depart from these constitutional precepts that make us strong, we become a prey to all the other nations, because in our own land, we no longer follow a way of righteousness. We no longer follow a path of justice. And that internal oppression leads to the national front, where then we become a prey to other nations. You know, Isaiah says, all the prophets, when you follow their work, you find this lament that if Israel had never realized their full potential. Israel had never come into their being at any point in time, not during the days of Moses or Joshua, not during the Judges period, and not during the monarchy. Israel never realized its full potential simply because the nation and its people never fully implemented the Constitution. And Isaiah has this lament. This is Isaiah 48, verse 16. It says, come near to me and hear this. I have not spoken in secret from the beginning, from the time that it was. I was there. Hear now, says Yahweh God, for his Spirit has sent me. Thus saith Yahweh, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am Yahweh your God, that teaches you to profit, that leads you by the way that you should go. Oh, that you would have listened to my commandments. Then had your peace been as a river, and your righteousness as the waves of the sea. Your seed also would have been as the sand, and your offspring as the boughs, like the gravel thereof. His name should not have been cut off, nor destroyed me from before me. So there's this idea, again, that we follow the covenants. We follow the policies that are enumerated in Torah, and those naturally lead to peace, and they eliminate conflict and war. So what about internal strife? You know, our nation, if you look in the last few years, it seems that, at least within the United States, that internal strife just increases every day. I can remember growing up in the 80s, and it seemed like we were at a time where we were coming into unity. We were coming into peace. The Berlin Wall had fallen, and there was just this unification, it seemed, of peace and of prosperity and of values that did not seek to oppression, but they sought to liberate. Today, it seems that has kind of come full circle. So what are some of the stipulations that Torah has for national unity? One of the first things that we find is that Torah establishes times of national congregation, national assemblies. 3 times a year, Israel comes together. Can you imagine if we here in the United States all descended on Washington, D.C. 3 times a year, or at least the representatives from all of our state and local municipalities? We all converged on the Capitol, and we had this convention that lasted for an entire week, where the sole purpose of that convention was teaching, reading, and hearing of the Constitution. You know, that would provide so much unity for our nation. Well, you know, Israel had that. They listened to the Torah Constitution every year, and then it was read publicly every 7 years. But beyond that, there were things that occurred in the local communities. One of the things that Leviticus 23, verse 3 commands, it says that you are to have holy convocations every Shabbat. So what we are doing here today is, via long distance, is more or less a holy convocation. But could you imagine if everybody in your city, say everyone in New Orleans, or everyone in Los Angeles, everyone in Pittsburgh or Chicago, the entire community came into local communities once a week, and they heard this Constitution being preached. They heard the values being preached every week, and the nation came together. that provides incredible unity and incredible solidarity, something that we miss out today because our Constitution in America does not have these provisions. Israel was also blessed by the idea that it had one God and one constitution. There was not this strife against it because it was ordained from the foundation of the nation. The other thing that it ordained were just laws that between citizens, laws that sought to relieve oppression. So these right here, as we see, this right here answers some of the reasons for affliction on national war front, on affliction from conflict between nations. If we follow it, we are blessed. But then if we don't follow these things, then the natural consequence is that there will be division, there will be strife, and there will be war. Now, what about within the land internally? Israel's nation provided a lot of statutes for justice, statutes that no nation on earth follows today. So the first place really where justice occurs and where oppression is relieved is on the national level, and that has to do with the nation's economics. The economics in Israel established land for every male citizen upon birth. So rather than redistributing wealth, in Israel's economy, land was redistributed, and every male heir had land upon birth, and that land was tax-free. So could you imagine the incredible potential that you had with your family to grow and live on your land and to live on it freely? The second blessing was the Jubilee system. This was an economic system. Every seventh year, you not only allowed the land to rest from crops, but interest rates, or not interest rates, but debt was totally eliminated and forgiven. Yahweh in Leviticus 25, verse 17, Yahweh states that the reason for his Sabbaths, and the Jubilee was termed one of the Sabbaths, the reason for his Sabbaths is that we would learn not to oppress one another, but we would fear Yahovah our God. So throughout the ancient Near East, one of the custom and one practice that they had, governments, and these were usually temple organizations, would set rates of interest for that society. And these were usually exorbitant rates of interest that really oppressed the poor. In Israel, this type of system was banned. In Exodus 22, verse 25, says, if you lend to any of my people that is poor, you shall not be unto him as a user, neither shall you lay upon him usury. Now, in a usury system, a person's home as well as his personal possessions can be confiscated. Remember, the tribal inheritance were successive from generation to generation. In the Torah economic system, a person could never lose their land because of debt. So this provided a lot of stability, a lot of unity for the nation, and prevented a lot of injustice. It prevented poverty. Now, there was a means for satisfying debt in that you always retained your land, you always retained your tribal possession, but your human labor could be sold for a short period of time. The maximum was 6 years in the Hebrew society. But even in this system, even when you repaid your debt through labor, you still retained your tribal land inheritance. And that, again, provided you another step or another fence against poverty. Land, this system, this land-based system, really eliminated a lot of the social stratification that we see in modern societies. It eliminated the income gap. And beyond this, debts, as I mentioned before, were forgiven every 7 years. Turn with me to Deuteronomy 15, verse 1, because this is what Yahweh says regarding the policy of debt forgiveness in the 7th year. It says, at the end of every 7 years you shall make a release, and this is the manner of release. Every creditor that lends to his neighbor shall release it. You will not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called Yahweh's release. Of the foreigner you may exact it again, This is talking about after the 7th year release. You can exact it again after the 7th year. But that which is in your hand of your brother, in your hand you shall release, save when there shall be no poor among you. For Yahweh shall greatly bless you in your land that God gives you for inheritance to possess it. Only if you will carefully listen to the voice of Yahweh your God, to observe to do all the commandments which I command you this day. For fear Yahweh your God that blesses you as he promised you, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you. If there be among you a poor man, or one of your brethren in any of your gates in your cities that Yahweh your God gives you, you shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother, but you shall open your hand wide to him, and you shall lend to him sufficient for his need that he wants. Beware, and do not think in your wicked heart, saying, in the 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, that he giveth him not. And he cry unto Yahweh against you, and it be a sin to you. You shall surely give to him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give to him, because that is the thing that Yahweh your God shall bless you in all your works that you puttest your hand to do. For the poor shall never cease out of your land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open wide the hand to your poor brother and to his need. Now, there is this idea that the poor does not cease out of the land when we fail from upholding all the statutes of the covenant. But the promise in other parts of the covenant that if we obey these statutes, it says there will not be a poor person in our land because we have upheld those statutes that eliminate poverty. So again, poverty is a statute that eliminates strife within a land. It eliminates the things that bring poverty to a land. It eliminates the need for social strife, because there is justice and there is righteousness. Now, other ways that the government or that society establishes peace in a land is through civil penalties. Penalties for theft, penalties for murder, penalties for fraud. And we find that God had given all of these ideas, all of these judgments to Abraham very early in the covenant process. In Genesis 18, verse 9, Yahweh states, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, that they shall keep the way of Yahweh to do justice and judgment, that Yahweh may bring upon him that which he has spoken. There is the idea within the Torah that this peace, this harmony, this prosperity is achieved through justice and judgment. That is the way of Yahweh that affects all of these things. We find that when the Queen of Sheba came to King Solomon in 1 Kings 10, verse 9, she blessed him, and this was the reason for her blessing. She says, blessed be Yahweh God, which delights in you to set you on the throne, because Yahweh loved Israel forever. Therefore he made you a king to do justice and judgment. So we find that when the justice and the judgment that is established in Torah, when those precepts, those ideas are upheld within the nation, we find that there is this incredible blessing, and people are glad to be a part of that society. They have a national pride that is very good and is very holy and righteous. You know, Solomon also tells us in his wisdom in Proverbs 21, verse 3, he states, to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to Yahweh than sacrifice. You know, when we decline from justice and from judgment, there are consequences. Trust is broken. There are consequences sometimes that cannot be repaired. If a life is taken, that life cannot be restored. If a theft is done and the merchandise or whatever is destroyed, could even be a precious family heirloom, sometimes those things cannot be restored. So the key to get with the program, the key is to do it right in the first place and to not decline from the law. But when there is declining from the law provides ways and means by which a society can come back to a state of peacefulness, and so that equilibrium is not impinged. Now, another thing that Torah established as far as righteousness and justice was that in most ancient societies at the time the Torah was given, retribution for an injustice, whether it would be for murder or for theft, was often handled within families and within clans, and you would often have warring clans. One clan would war against the other, and they would seek justice. I mean, you see this even today in the Middle East, where there's this incredible strife between different groups and different clans and religious groups. In Torah, there was what we see, the establishment of government, and all law and all justice was to be handled through the court system. So this was a very civil type of handling of not only persecution, but of handling of injustice and inequity. In the cases of judges, God establishes these judges to keep law in order. If you will turn with me to Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, this is the command for judges in the land. It says, "Appoint judges and officials for each of your tribes in every town that Yahweh your God has given to you, and they shall judge the people fairly. Do not pervert justice or show partiality. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Follow justice and judgment alone. Justice alone, and that you may live and possess the land your God is giving to you." And then we find in Deuteronomy 17, verse 18, this idea that there is an appellate court where if a case is too hard, if the judgment is too hard for one group of judges, then it goes up the chain until it reaches the high priest, and then he issues the judgment. But there is this call for righteous judgment. But what happens when a judge does judge unfairly? What happens when he does take a bribe? Or what happens when he does not uphold the Constitution? There is something in the law that is given as a protection for the people that really help to establish the peace on the land. We saw earlier where it talked about not accepting bribes. Exodus 23, verse 8 says, "Do not take gift, for a gift blinds the eyes of the eye and perverts the words of the righteous." And in many cases today, we hear about politicians taking kickbacks. We hear about somebody receiving a donation, and then all of a sudden a court rules in a favor because there's been a campaign contribution or some conflict of interest, or perhaps a particular judge even owns stock in a particular company, and the judgment is perverted. So what happens, at least in ancient Israel, when these types of injustices occur on the land? What we find in Torah's constitution is that it established higher penalties for the leaders of the land when injustice occurred or when a breach of law occurred, so that the leader of the land sometimes paid 4 or 5 times the amount in penalty than what a common citizen would. This again made it the politician, the leader, the judge think twice about what he would do that would compromise his integrity in the land. Again, the law commands us not to wrest the cause of the poor. In Exodus 23, verse 6, you were not supposed to consider the financial status of the person that brought a case into the court system. You weren't to consider if he was poor. You weren't to consider if he was wealthy and he could afford it. Really, their financial status was not an issue. It was the issue of the case at hand by which you were to judge. Judge based on the merits of the case, not on the financial status. This, again, established the nation upon values. It established it based on the law and it was that law that provided unity, that constitution that brought the nation together and established peace in the land. The other thing that the Torah provided was incredible provisions for the poor. Again, if you were poor and a man was always born into a piece of land that was his, It could have been a vast income estate. It may have just been a small parcel of land where he had a home and he could live. But again, that was tax-free. He could live there, he could support his family, or he could seek employment elsewhere. So there were many provisions. Beyond this, the Jubilee system relieved debts every 6 years. So you had a lot of safeguards for the nation. Now, the curse for not following these precepts outlined in the law, for not following the Jubilee economic system, for not following the justice and the righteousness that is established in Torah, the curses are enumerated in Deuteronomy 28, verses 29. And we're going to read through verse 30. It says, "And you shall grope at noonday as the blind gropes in darkness, and you shall not prosper in your ways, and you shall be only oppressed and spoiled before me, and no man shall save you. You shall betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. You shall build a house, and you shall not dwell therein. You will plant a vineyard, and you shall not gather the grapes thereof. And your ox will be slain before your eyes, and you shall not eat thereof. Your ass shall be violently taken from before you, and before your face, and you will not be restored to you. And your sheep will be given to your enemies, and you shall have none to rescue them." Now, we often think of this text in the ancient concept of ancient Israel, but truly it is not ancient. And in fact, I would like to take this idea of your ox being slain before your eyes and demonstrate how it applies to us today, even in diaspora, where there are different social systems that oppose Torah that afflict oppression on us. Now, this is a very simplified economic analogy of how different social structures or different economic systems serve to oppress. So this is, kind of is very simplistic. Okay, so in socialism, you have 2 cows, the government takes one and gives one to your neighbor. Again, that's a form of oppression. Communism, you have 2 cows, the government takes them both and promises you milk, but you starve. Fascism, you have 2 cows, the government takes them and sells you the milk. Bureaucracy, you have 2 cows, the government takes them both, shoots one, milks the other, pays you for the milk, and pours it down the drain. Capitalism, you have 2 cows, you sell one and buy a bull. In the Torah system, you had the choice of what to do with your livelihood, the choice of what to do with your land, but it did not oppress. It did not come into your life and take from you to give to your brother. Rather, each man, throughout Torah we read that Yahweh gives us each man according to his ways. That which a man sows, that shall he reap. So there was this idea that we benefit from our own investments. And society benefits from the safeguards that are established within the Torah that prevent oppression of one another. So these are the statutes and the ideas that prevent war and national conflict. The second thing that we're going to look at are going to be accidents. Accidents are really something that we have no control over. A lot of the teachings in Torah teach us to be careful, to realize that there is culpability, and it was that culpability holding the individual responsible for his actions that made them careful, say before they went speeding down the interstate, or say before they drove while intoxicated. That responsibility could not be given to another person. The individual was always held accountable. So in Exodus 21, verse 19, there are cases where a man causes the injury of another person. It says, "If he rise again and walks abroad, then he that smote him shall be quit. Only he shall repay for his loss of time and cause him to be thoroughly healed." So there's this idea that the person that causes injury is to restore that person to his pre-injury status by whatever means possible. And this, again, established peace on the land. This established an equitable system where the injured did not have to live with his injury without some sort of assistance. But also, it was very important because in Torah, unlike many of the systems that we have today, the innocent were not required to suffer for negligence or criminal ignorance that caused that injury or that suffering. So this again provided peace and unity on the land. The third status, or the third category we're going to look at, is going to be famine. Famine is notoriously one of the tools that we find in Torah that Yehovah uses for establishing, or rather a means for judging his people and for judging their ways. So let's look at the blessings of the law and the promises that are given for walking in the statutes and the commands. Leviticus 26, verse 3 states, "If you walk in my statutes and commands to keep them and do them, if you will keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary, I am Yahweh. If you will walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them, then I will give you rain in due season, and the land shall yield her increase, and the trees of her field her fruit." Deuteronomy reiterates the same thing. Deuteronomy 28, verses 1 and 2 states, "And it shall come to pass, if you will listen diligently to the voice of Yahweh your God, to observe and do all his commandments which I command you this day, that Yahweh your God will set you on high above all the nations of the earth, and all these blessings will come upon you and overtake you, if you will listen to the voice of Yahweh your God." Again, notice this is the idea of natural consequences. Blessings naturally occur from doing the things that are outlined in the law, from following those statutes and those precepts. Deuteronomy 28, verse 8, "Yahweh your God shall command blessing upon you in your storehouses and all that you set your hands to do, and he will bless you in the land that he gives you. And Yahweh will make you plenteous in goods, and in the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your cattle, and the fruit of your ground, in the land which Yahweh your God swore to your fathers." So how do the statutes and the law, how do the teachings and the precepts in the law establish prosperity and this incredibly fertile land that is incredibly prosperous? Well, the economic system established the fallowing of land. That was one way, allowing the land to rest every 7 years. Beyond this, there is this idea that the land itself bears the iniquity of the people. You know, in Genesis 4, verse 10, Yehovah tells Cain, "Your brother's blood cries out to me." Throughout Torah as well, and the prophets, we find this idea that the land itself bears blood guilt, and that there comes this point in time where injustice, iniquity, and oppression reach a point that the land itself can no longer bear that iniquity, and that either the people are cast out, they are deported, or they are slain for the iniquity that exists on that land. So these are very sobering concepts. They're not necessarily concepts that are comfortable to hear. They're not necessarily ones that sit well, but you know what? It gives us the power to change. It gives us the power to do something different. So let's look at the consequences now for not following the precepts enumerated in Torah. And this would be the curse of famine. We're going to look first at the Sinai covenant, Leviticus 26, verse 14. "But if you will not listen to me and will not do all these commandments, if you will despise my statutes and your soul abhor my judgments, so that you will not do my commandments, but you break my covenant, then I will do this to you." Let's skip down to verse 19. "I will make your heaven as iron and your earth as brass. Your strength shall be spent in vain, and your land shall not yield her increase, neither shall the trees of your land yield their fruits." You know, there's many ways by which God applies this. One of the ways is through fungus and blight. And in fact, in just a moment, we'll see that fungus and blight are specifically mentioned in the curses of Deuteronomy as what Yehovah applies to a land to cause crops to shrink, to cause the produce to wither as the sins of the people become greater. Verse 28, Deuteronomy 28:15. "But it shall come to pass, if you will not listen to the voice of Yahweh your God, to observe and do all his commandments and statutes which I command you this day, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you." Cursed will you be in your city, and cursed will you be in your field. Cursed will you be in your basket, in your store. How do you curse the storehouses? Well, there become rats that get into the silos that eat your store. There are pests and other bugs that come in, grasshoppers. They come in and they eat all of your produce and all of your store that you have put through your times of plenty, and your increase of your land begins to shrink and it begins to dwindle. I don't know if you guys have followed this, but one of the things that we're facing with banana production worldwide is that there is a fungus that is affecting banana plants that they have not yet found a remedy for. And if we don't find a remedy for this, I believe it is in something like 10 years, bananas could go extinct because of this particular fungus. So again, but there is this idea that if we depart from the ways, it allows these things to occur, but if we follow the constitutional precepts, they are staved and they are not able to afflict us. In Deuteronomy 28, verses 23 through 24, you might think we're reading from the Sinai covenant, but we're actually reading from the Deuteronomy covenant, but it says the same thing. And behold, the heaven that is over you, your head shall be as brass, and the earth that is under you shall be as iron. And Yahweh will make the rain of your land powder and dust, and from heaven it shall come down to you till you be destroyed. So again, we see famine is the result of departing from the way of Yahovah. So when we see famine on a land, again, we have to examine the justice on the land. We have to examine the precepts that we are upholding. But there is a remedy for this. We're not left just in suffering where there is no light or there is no hope. And in fact, God gives, in the covenant that God makes with King Solomon, he gives a very specific promise. So, and for many of you, this is probably one of your favorite verses. I know it is mine. If you turn to 2 Chronicles 7:13, Yahweh promises, if I shut up heaven that there be no rain, if I command locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek from my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. The healing of the land, the healing of famine, comes from us turning from what we do, returning to the covenants and sanctifying the way of Yahovah. So we've seen that war comes from departing from the way of Yahovah, turning from the ways that establish peace and justice on the land. We find that accidents, even when those occur, there are ways and remedies to restore as much as possible an equitable situation and to make good that which is lost. This again provides peace within the land. We also find with famine and with natural disasters, there are ways for remedies. There are ways to be restored in each of these cases. But by far, the toughest discussion and the toughest issue to address is that of disease. It affects each of us personally. Some of us deal with it in our own personal lives, and many of us have lost loved ones. So what does Torah state? What is the view that Torah presents regarding disease? You know, Israel was kind of unique among ancient nations regarding the relationship of sin and disease. In Greece, there was no correlation between sin and illness. It was something that was completely isolated. What you did had no bearing whatsoever on the things that happened in your life. In Mesopotamia, it was a little step closer. There was this idea that what you did result in sins, but it was never clearly defined. The gods could punish you and afflict you arbitrarily for anything that upset them. There was no standard by which the gods were held accountable. And sickness could even have come by something a relative did or something that an associate did. So you never really knew what the cause of your illness was or how to remedy it. Israel was unique in that it outlined ways of and prescribed ways of life for living, not only for the individual but also for society. And it provided remedies for those should those measures or should those safeguards not be followed. So sin was indeed a breach of law that often did result in sin. But the Torah had several concepts with this. First of all, it held the concept that no man is an island. What another person does can affect you. A great modern example of this is Ebola. There were many people that were innocently affected by this disease because one person, I believe I saw some reports that said they were eating bats. Or in prior years and in prior cases, say back in 2002, it occurred because they were eating the Manchurian gorilla that also carried the disease. But in each case, there's one individual or one family that doesn't follow what we know in Western society to be clean health protocols, and they introduce this disease to their local communities. It then spreads rapidly throughout the entire society, and many innocent people are afflicted. So sin is not this one-per-one correspondence where you necessarily did something in your life where there was sin, but rather it is a failure and a breakdown of the society and the community. Now, sometimes there is a direct relation that can be remedied, but not in every case. Often, like in cases with drunk driving, what another person does is no fault of you. You're innocently driving down the highway, but again, this comes to accidents. A person made the choice to drive while intoxicated. Their judgment is impaired, and you and your family are left holding the consequence of that. So again, there were remedies put into place to rectify it, but it never was the same as not doing it. And that's why the Torah encourages to follow the precepts first and to make the wise decisions. The other thing that Torah embraces is the idea that society and communities should protect the land. I think the case of, if y'all ever saw the movie based on Aaron Brockovich's work, where a company was dumping toxic waste and it was spreading cancer throughout an entire community. People were dying of breast cancer and all of these diseases very rapidly. So a lot of times disease occurs by our society allowing unhealthy practices in the land itself, whether it's toxic waste or even not following the healthy protocols established within the Jubilees. Oftentimes, too, I think with this God complex, where we say us and our lives, we've turned from what we are doing, we want immediate healing. And that is not always the reality of how our bodies work. It's not always the reality of how life works. I had a friend who smoked for 30 years, and after 30 years, he quit. And now, some 20 years later, he's in his late 70s. He's having emphysema and a lot of health issues from the years that he indeed smoked. So just turning from your sins does not always alleviate the consequences. Those consequences are often still there. So forgiveness, there can be forgiveness, and that often means that, if you look at Ezekiel 18 and Ezekiel 33, the forgiveness means that God is not going to take any judgment. In the lesson today with Israel's sin with the Parsha, with Baal Peor, we find that there was this immediate judgment. Israel had sought the remedy through this cult, where in a lot of ancient cults, you participated in this unification with the God, and the unification was often done through sexual practices. This was something that the Torah openly condemns and is very much against, but yet it is something that even in our modern society, look at the cults and all the leaders that use that perversely, and they use it as a power tool to oppress people. So in the case of Baal Peor, there was this active judgment of God that we see that occurs. But in our society today, we really see more of consequences of things perhaps that we have inherited from our forefathers. When you fill out an application for health insurance or you go to the doctors, they always want to know what the disease pattern is in your family. They say, is there a pattern of disease? Does your grandfather or your father or your aunt have a history of heart disease? What about cancer? They want to know these things because they understand that it does indeed occur in our DNA. There's actually tests now where, and if you may have heard that Angela Jolie indeed had one of these tests done, where it showed that she carried a gene that could produce breast cancer. So these things that we do can indeed become embedded in our genes, and we can pass it down to our children. But what we find in Torah is that by turning from those ways, we can reverse those things from being passed down to our children, and we can establish a different heritage for them. We can establish health for them rather than disease. So with those caveats, let's look at the blessing and the curse that are established in regards to disease within the law. In Leviticus 26, we find, "You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am Yahweh your God. If you walk in my statutes and keep my commands and do them, then and we're going to skip down to verse 10, I will have respect to you and make you fruitful and multiply you and establish my covenant with you. You shall eat the old store and bring forth from the old, from the new. And I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul will not abhor you." So you have this idea of God dwelling with society, of God being part of society and having a relationship. "I will walk among you, and I will be your God, and you will be my people. I am Yahweh your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt. You shall not be their bondmen. And I have broken your bands of your yoke and made you go upright." Deuteronomy 28, verse 4 elaborates on this. It says, "Blessed shall be the fruit of your body." Skip down to verse 9. "Yahweh will establish and make you a holy people to himself, as he has sworn to you this day. If you keep the covenants of Yahweh your God and walk in his ways, and all the people of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of Yahweh your God, and they shall be afraid of you. And Yahweh will make you plenteous in your goods, and in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your cattle, and in the fruit of your ground, and in the land which Yahweh your God shall give you." So what are the statutes that God has given to bless us? What are the statutes in the law that enable this good health? Well, kashrut is one of them. A John Hopkins professor by the name of David Mock did a toxicity test on different meats. In every single case, he found that unclean meats such as bear, rabbit, and swine contained more parasites and bacteria, as did those that are clean and allowed to be eaten according to Torah. The other precept is avoiding fat and blood. The other thing, and his name was David Mock. The other thing that Dr. Mock's studies revealed is that in every single case, blood and fat are more toxic than the flesh of the animal. So again, when God says, "I have given you these statutes that you may prosper, I have given you these statutes that you may live," we actually have scientific evidence that backs this up. Circumcision is another precept of the law that provides health. When I was researching my book, one of the things that I was astounded to find out is that circumcision protects the woman. In cases, when you look at the Jewish community, studies have been performed within the Jewish community for the last 80 years. In every single case, it is found that Jewish communities that observe the circumcision statute, in those communities, women have an 8 times less likely to develop cervical cancer. Men are also less likely to contract sexually transmitted diseases. So you find there's very practical reasons for the instructions in Torah. The cleanliness laws during menstruation, those also protect a woman, because when a woman is menstruating, her cervix is open and it opens her up to sickness and disease and the infection, which can eventually lead to cancer. Another protocol was for resting on Shabbat. You know, resting relieves stress, and stress is key, or rather, relieving stress is key to a healthy society, a healthy economic society, as well as a healthy society that is free from disease. Freedom from oppression, again, relieves stress so that that stress does not internalize and make you sick within your life. So we find that every single law that Yahweh has given to us in Torah enables the family to be strong and to be free of stress and to reach its full and maximum potential. But the exact opposite of that, declining from the law, leads to oppression and it leads to disease. So let's read the curse in Deuteronomy 28, verse 58. The curse is, if you will not observe all the words of this law, all the words of the law that are written in this book, that you may fear his glorious and fearful name, Yahweh your Elohim. Then Yahweh will make your plagues wonderful, and the plagues of your seed, even plagues of long continuance, and sore sickness, and of long continuance. Moreover, I will bring upon you the diseases of Egypt, which you were afraid, and they shall cleave unto you. Now, one of the things that I did in my studies was I did a study on what the diseases of Egypt were. And what we find from Egyptian mummies is that they were afflicted by the very diseases we were afflicted today. They had osteoporosis, they had arthritis, they had heart disease. Cardiovascular diseases were huge among ancient Egyptians. So these things keep repeating in our history. And Yahweh continues to say, along with this curse, also every sickness and plague which is not written in this book of the law, them will Yahweh bring upon you until you are destroyed. So God is claiming that He will that whether He destroys us or it naturally occurs by declining from the law, the end is suffering and affliction and destruction. And yet you will be few in number, wherefore you were as the stars of the heaven in multitude, because you would not obey the voice of Yahweh your God. So, again, there is the idea that following the law provides protection. Now, oftentimes, this protection is not, we don't always reap that protection. Sometimes we have to be the change of our heritage. We have to change the DNA that is passed down to our children. So that means we have to change our actions. And maybe children, grandchildren, and future generations will reap that reward for the choices that we have made because we are establishing a different heritage for them. But it just can't be personal. It has to be society and community where our land has a different heritage. There is righteousness and justice upon the land. Exodus 15:26 provides another promise. It says, and if you will diligently listen to the voice of Yahweh your God and will do that which is right in his sight and will give ear to his commandments and keep his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon you which I have put upon the Egyptians, for I am Yahweh your God who heals you. Isaiah again, he says that, observing the commandments such as the Jubilees, such as the Sabbath day of rest, it is what heals us. Isaiah 30, verse 15. For thus saith Yahweh your God, the Holy One of Israel, and in returning and in rest shall you be saved, and quiet and confidence shall be your strength. So, there's this idea that by following these peaceful ways of the law, we kind of become addicted to conflict in our modern society where we want a good story. We want to see this constant righteousness triumphing over evil, or this constant because it's good conflict because it's good entertainment. But in a righteous society, you really don't have that conflict. There is peace. There is righteousness. Now, let me preface all this by saying that, if you come away from what the verses that I've brought today with thinking that there is always a direct correlation between sin and disease, let me have you think again. Consider the case of Elisha. Elisha performed miracles that only Elijah before him and Moses performed. They were really and Samuel. They were really the only 4 people in Israel's history that are recorded as having done these type of miracles. He did things, and kings answered to him. He established a king on Assyria's throne. He was given incredible political power and incredible prophetic power that not all prophets were given in Israel's history. But towards the end of his life, even he too succumbed to sickness and disease. If you read 2 Kings 13, verse 14, it states, "Now Elisha was fallen sick of the sickness whereof he died." And this was at the time when Joash had come to him. Even Hezekiah, Hezekiah is listed as having been the most righteous king in Israel's history. It says that he did all that David his father did. It says there was none like him as to all the kings of Israel that did righteous upon the throne of Israel. But even Hezekiah was sick unto death during his reign. In fact, Isaiah told him to set his house in order because he was going to die. Now, Hezekiah pleaded for mercy. He pleaded that his life would be extended, and God granted that healing, and he granted that petition. But it was not without consequence. The result of Hezekiah's extended life was a child named Manasseh, who horribly oppressed the people, who murdered them, and went down in history as the worst king in Judah's history. In fact, he was so bad that God said he would not forgive Manasseh's sins. So there are consequences, and sometimes God can see things that we are not always privy to. One of the things that I found in my personal studies was that there is a declining from the law. And as this declining from the law, whether it be on health issues, economics, or on issues of justice, as these things occur generation after generation, it opens the door for disease to come into a society, and for it to come into and affect a society at a very large percentage that is not allowed when the covenant is followed. Now, Yahweh has given us promises of healing. He's given us promises of restoration, and let me share one of those with you. This is Deuteronomy 7, verse 12 through 15. It says, "Wherefore it shall come to pass, if you will listen to these judgments and keep them and do them, that Yahweh your God shall keep unto you the covenant and mercy whereof he swore to your fathers. And he will love you and bless you and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your corn, your wine, and your oil, the increase of your kine and the flocks and your sheep, and the land that he sware to your fathers to give you. And you will be blessed above all people, and there shall not be a male or female barren among you or among your cattle. And Yahweh will take away from you all the sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt which you know upon you, but he will lay them all upon them that hate you." This is the promise. This is our future, and this is the hope we can claim today, because it is the promises of the covenants that give us the healing. It is following and walking in that way of life that provides us with peace and prosperity. Again, no man is an island. We are affected by what our neighbor does, and by the policies that our government embraces. But we can start with one. We can make a difference, and we can educate. We can talk, and we can have constructive dialogue that seeks to encourage and that seeks to unite this idea of unity and the principles by which relieve oppression. Throughout Scripture we are taught, again, that the law seeks prosperity in every way. Jeremiah 2, verses 4 gives us this promise again, and it's almost as though it's written to us today. Jeremiah says, "Hear you the word of Yahweh, O house of Jacob, and all the families of the house of Israel. Thus saith Yahweh, what iniquity have your fathers found in me, that they have departed from me and walked after vanity and are become vain? Neither said they, where is Yahweh that brought up the land of Egypt, that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, that led us through the wilderness, through a land of desert pits, and through a land of drought, and in the shadow of death, through a land that no man passed through and no man dwells. So there's this idea that Israel has lost the idea of this God that can sustain Israel. They've lost this idea of a God that is capable of bringing humanity and bringing a people through a situation whereby it would kill most people and most other societies in that situation. God can sustain and he can bring them through. It says, and I brought you through a plentiful country to eat the fruit and the goodness thereof. But when you entered, you defiled my land and made my heritage an abomination. The priests say not, where is Yahweh? And they that handle the law knew me not. The pastors also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after ways that did not prosper, or did not profit. Therefore I will plead with you, says Yahweh, and your children's children will I plead. For I will pass over the isles of Chittim, and I will see, and send to Kedar, and consider diligently, see if there be such a thing. Has a nation changed their gods, which are not yet gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. You know, we saw at the beginning that Deuteronomy 29 verse 9 states that if we obey the words of the covenant to do them, that we will prosper. Isaiah says, and he laments in Isaiah 48 verse 18, "Oh, that you would have hearkened to my commandments, then had your peace been as a river, and your righteousness as the ways of the sea." Yahweh is still pleading with us today. His pleading has not stopped. He is still pleading with us and our children, and he will continue to plead with our children's children. Turn from your ways and follow mine, that I may make you prosper. This prosperity does not come via a magic potion. It doesn't come via wishful thinking. It doesn't come from wanting it or asking for it. It comes by a way in which Yahweh may bless us and he may make us prosperous. Yahweh is still pleading with us today. If you read his words, you see this throughout his scripture. And it is a national call. And it is a national call and a national pleading that we return to him. Yahweh desires to comfort us. He desires to establish us. And his pleading is still the same. The final blessing of that Yahweh's covenant establishes is found in Deuteronomy 30. And this comes about after all these curses of war, all these curses of famine, all these curses of disease that we have gone through during our diaspora. Let me repeat, we go through these things during our diaspora. We do not go through these things at the restoration, because at the restoration, when we are following his ways, there is peace, there is comfort, and there is salvation. And this is the promise that he has established for you. Deuteronomy 30 verse 1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, you shall remember them among the nations, whither Yahweh your God has driven you. And you shall return to Yahweh your God, and obey his voice according to all that I command you this day, you and your children, with all your heart and your soul. Then Yahweh your God will turn your captivity and have compassion upon you, and he will turn and gather you from all nations, whither he has scattered you. Yahweh your God desires to heal you. He desires to restore you. Isaiah promises, you will listen to the commandments Yahweh your God has given you, and your peace will be as a river, and your righteousness as the ways of your sea. Yahweh will heal you in an acceptable time. He will heal you, and he will hear you, and he will heal you quickly. This is your hope, Israel. This is your future, and this is your salvation. Wait on Yahweh your God. Shabbat shalom.
Blessed is the man ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate. He shall be like a tree planted by rivers, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season, and his leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. But the ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. But the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. The Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish.
Blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel. Blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel, who only doeth wondrous things. Blessed be his glorious name forever and ever, forever and ever. Blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel. Blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel, who only doeth wondrous things. Let the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. Amen and amen.
Exodus 19:16. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. Exodus 20:1. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am Jehovah your God, which have brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make to you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to you shall not bow down yourself to them, nor serve them. For I, Jehovah your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of Jehovah your God in vain, for Jehovah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Jehovah your God. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days Jehovah made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which Jehovah your God gives you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Hear, O Israel, Jehovah our God, Jehovah is one, and you shall love Jehovah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk to them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And it shall come to pass, if you shall hearken diligently to my commandments, which I command you this day, to love Jehovah your God, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, that I will give you the rain of your land in his due season, the first rain, the latter rain, and you may gather in your corn and your wine and your oil, and I will send grass in your fields for your cattle, that you may eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. And then Jehovah's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven, and there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, unless you perish quickly from off the good land which Jehovah gives you. Therefore shall you lay up these my words in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall teach them your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up. And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates, that your days may be multiplied, the days of your children, in the land which Jehovah swore to your fathers to give them, as the days of heaven upon the earth. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. And it shall be to you for a fringe, that you may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of Jehovah, and do them, and that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go a-whoring, that you may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy to your God. I am Jehovah your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Jehovah your God.
Israel stayed in Shittim, and the people began to whore with the women of Moab. They called the people for slaughter offerings to their gods. the people ate and prostrated themselves to their gods. And Israel yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor. So the anger of Jehovah flared up against Israel. Jehovah said to Moshe, "Take all the heads of the people and impale them to Jehovah facing the sun, so that the flaming anger of Jehovah may turn from Israel." Moshe said to the officials of Israel, "Let each man kill of those of his men who yoke themselves to the Baal of Peor." Now here a man of the children of Israel had come and had brought near to his brothers a certain Midianitess before the eyes of Moshe and before the eyes of the entire community of the children of Israel, while they were all weeping at the entrance to the tent of appointment. When Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aharon, the priest, saw it, he arose from the midst of the community, taking a spear in his hand. He came after the man of Israel into the private chamber, and he thrust through the two of them, the man of Israel and the woman, in her private parts, and the plague was held back from the children of Israel. And those that died of the plague were 24,000. Now Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon, the priest, has turned my venomous anger from the children of Israel in his being zealous with my zeal in their midst, so that I did not finish off the children of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore say, here I give him my covenant of shalom. It shall be for him and for his seed after him a covenant of everlasting priesthood, because that he was zealous for his God and affected appeasement for the children of Israel." Now the name of the man of Israel, the one struck dead with the Midianites, was Zimri, the son of Salu, leader of a father's house of the Shimoni. And the name of the woman who was struck dead, the Midianitess, Cosbi, daughter of Tsur, tribal head of the father's house of Midian is he. Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Attack the Midiani and strike them, for they attacked you with their craftiness, with which they were crafty with you in the matter of Peor, in the matter of Cosbi, daughter of the leader of Midian, their sister, the one struck dead at the time of the plague in the matter of Peor." Now it was after the plague that Jehovah said to Moshe and to Eleazar, son of Aharon, the priest, saying, "Take up the head count of the entire community of the children of Israel from the age of 20 years and upward according to their father's house, everyone going out to the armed forces in Israel." Moshe spoke, and Eleazar the priest to them in the plains of Moab by Jordan Jericho, saying, "From the age of 20 years and upward, as Jehovah commanded Moshe and the children of Israel, those going out to the land of Egypt, Reuven, the firstborn of Israel, the sons of Reuven, Hanoch, and the Hanochi clan, Palu, and the Pali clan, Hetzron, and the Hezroni clan, Carmi, and the Carmi clan. These are the Reuveni clans, and their count was 340,730. The sons of Palu, Eliav, the sons of Eliav, Nemuel, Datan, and Abiram, that is the Datan and Abiram, those called by the community who struggled against Moshe and against Aharon among the community of Korah, when they struggled against Jehovah. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them and Korah at the death of the community, at the consuming by fire of the 50 and 200 men. They became a signal of warning. But the sons of Korah did not die. The sons of Shimon, according to their clans, of Nemuel, the Nemueli clan, of Yamin, the Yamani clan, of Yachan, Aryachin, the Yachani clan, of Zerah, the Zahari, of Shaul, the Shalui. These are the Shimoni clans, 22,200. The sons of God, according to their clans: Tzephon and the Tzephoni clan, Hagi and the Hagi clan, Shuni and the Shuni clan, Ozni and the Ozni clan, Eri and the Eri clan, Arod and the Arodi clan, Areli and the Areli clan. These are the clans of the sons of Gad by their accountings, 40,500. The sons of Yehuda, Er and Onan. But Er and Onan died in the land of Canaan. Now the sons of Yehuda, according to their clans, were Shelah and the Shelai, or the Shelani, Peretz and the Partzi clan, Zerah and the Zarhi clan. The sons of Peretz, Hetzron and the Hetzroni, Hamul and the Hamuli. These are the clans of Yehuda. By their accountings, 670,500. The sons of Issachar, according to their clans: Tola and the Tolai, Puva and the Puni clan, Yashuv and the Yashuvi clan, Shimron and the Shimroni clan. These are the clans of Issachar by their accountings, 460,300. The sons of Zebulun, according to their clans: of Sered and the Sardi clan, Elon and the Eloni clan, Yaleel and Yaleli clan. These are the clans of the Zebulani by their accountings, 60,500. The sons of Yosef, according to their clans: Manasseh and Ephraim. The sons of Manasseh: Machir and the Machiri clan. Now Machir begat Gilad, of Gilad the Giladi clan. These are the sons of Gilad: Ezer and Ezer clan, Helech and the Heleki clan, Ashriel and the Ashreli clan, Shechem and the Shechemi clan, Shemida and the Shemadi clan, Hefer and the Hefri clan, Zophelad and now Zophelad, son of Hefer, had no sons, only daughters, and the name of the daughters of Zelophehad, Malah and Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. These are the clans of Manasseh, and their accountings, 250,700. These are the sons of Ephraim, according to their clans: Shultelah and the Shultelai clan, Becher and the Bechri clan, Tahan and the Tahani clan. These are the sons of Shutelah of Iran, then the Irani clan. These are the clans of the sons of Ephraim, according to their accountings, 230,500. These are the sons of Yosef, according to their clans. The sons of Binyamin, according to their clans: of Bela, the Bali clan, Ashbel, the Ashbeli clan, Ahiram and the Aharami clan, Shefufam and the Shefufami, of Hufam and the Hufami clan. The sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman. The Ardi clan, of Naaman the Naamani clan. These are the sons of Binyamin according to their clans. Their accountings, 540,600. These are the sons of Dan according to their clans: Shusham and the Shushami clan. These are the clans of Dan according to their clans. All the Shushami clans according to their accountings, 60,400. The sons of Asher according to their clans: Yimnah and the Yimnah clan, Yishvi and the Yishvi clan, Berai and the Berai clan. For the sons of Berai, Heber and the Heberi, Malkiel and the Malkieli, Now, the name of Asher's daughter was Sarah. These are the clans of the sons of Asher according to their accountings, 350,000 and 400. The sons of Naphtali according to their clans, Yatzel and Yatzel clan, Guni and the Guni clan, Yetzer and the Yitzrai clan, Shilem and the Shilemi clan. These are the clans of Naphtali according to their clans, their accountings, 5 and 40,000 and 400. These are the accountings of the children of Israel, 600,000 and 1,730. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, To these shall the land be portioned out as an inheritance by the enumerated names. To the many you are to give much as their inheritance. To the few you are to give little as their inheritance. Each one according to its count is it to be given its inheritance. However, by lot the land is to be apportioned by the listed names of the ancestral tribes they are to inherit it. By means of the lot is its inheritance to be apportioned between the many and the few. And these are the accountings of the Levi according to their clans, of Gershon and the Gershoni clan, Chahat and the Chahati, Merari and the Merari clan. These are the clans of Levi. The Livni clan, the Hebroni clan, and the Mahali clan, the Mushi clan, and the Korite clan. Now, Chahat begot Amram. The name of Amram's wife was Yocheved, daughter of Levi, who bore her to Levi in Egypt. She bore to Amram, Aharon, and Moshe, and Miriam, their sister. There were born to Aharon Nadav and Abihu, Eleazar, and Itamar. But Nadav and Abihu had died when they brought near outside fire before the presence of Jehovah, and their accounting was 23,000, all males from the age of a month and upward, for they had not been counted in the midst of the children of Israel, for they were not given an inheritance in the midst of the children of Israel. These are those counted by Moshe and Eleazar the priest, that they counted of the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by Jordan Jericho. Among these there was not a man of those counted by Moshe and Aharon the priest, when they counted the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For Jehovah had said to them, They are to die, yes, die in the wilderness. There will not be left of them a man except for Caleb, the son of Yephuneh, and Yehoshua, the son of Nun. There came near the daughters of Zelophehad, son of Hefer, the son of Gilad, the son of Machir, son of Manasseh, of the clan of Manasseh, son of Yosef. And these are the names of his daughters: Malah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They stood before Moshe and before Eleazar the priest and before the leaders of the entire community at the entrance of the tent of appointment, saying, Our father died in the wilderness. He was not in the midst of the community that came together against Jehovah in the community of Korah. Rather, for his own sin he died, and his sons he did not have. Why should the name of our father be taken away from the midst of his clan just because he has no son? Give us a holding in the midst of our father's brothers. Moshe brought near their case before the presence of Jehovah. And Jehovah said to Moshe, saying, Rightfully speak the daughters of Zelophehad. You are to give, yes, give them a hereditary holding in the midst of their father's brothers. You are to transfer the inheritance of their father to them. And the children of Israel you are to speak, saying, Any man, when he dies and a son he does not have, you are to transfer his inheritance to his daughter. And if he has no daughter, you are to give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, you are to give his inheritance to his father's brothers. And if no brothers has his father, you are to give his inheritance to his kin that is nearest to him from his clan, and he is to take possession of it. It shall be for the children of Israel as a law of procedure, as Jehovah commanded Moshe. Jehovah said to Moshe, Go up these mountains of Avarim, and see the land that I am giving to the children of Israel. When you have seen it, you will be gathered to your kinspeople, even you, as Aharon your brother was gathered, since you rebelled against my order in the wilderness of Tzin, when the community quarreled to treat me as holy through the water before their eyes. They are the waters of Merevat Kadesh, in the wilderness of Tzin. Then Moshe spoke to Jehovah, saying, Let Jehovah, the God of the spirits of all flesh, designate a man over the community, who will go out before them, who will come back before them, who will lead them out, who will bring them back, so that the community of Jehovah will not be like a flock that has no shepherd. Jehovah said to Moshe, Take yourself Yehoshua, son of Nun, a man in whom the Spirit is, and lean your hand upon him. You are to have him stand before Eleazar the priest and before the entire community, and you are to commission him before their eyes. You are to put of your majesty upon him, in order that they may hearken, the entire community of the children of Israel. Before Eleazar the priest he is to stand. He will seek judgment for him of the Urim before the presence of Jehovah. By his order he will go out, and by his order he will come back, he and all the community of Israel with him, the entire community. Moshe did as Jehovah had commanded him. He took Yehoshua and had him stand before Eleazar the priest and before the entire community. He leaned his hands upon him and commissioned him as Jehovah had spoken by the hand of Moshe. Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Command the children of Israel, and say to them, Of my near offering, my food, as my fire offerings, my soothing savor, you are to be in charge, bringing it near to me at its appointed time. And you are to say to them, This is the fire offering that you are to bring near to Jehovah. Lambs a year in age, wholly sound, 2 per day, as a regular offering up. 1 lamb you are to sacrifice in the morning, the second lamb you are to sacrifice between the setting times, and 1/10 of an ephah of flour as a grain gift, mixed with oil, crushed 1/4 of a hin. The regular offering up, sacrificed at Mount Sinai, as a soothing savor, a fire offering for Jehovah. And its poured offering is 1/4 of a hin for the first lamb. In the holy shrine you are to pour it out as a poured offering of intoxicant for Jehovah. And the second lamb you are to sacrifice between the setting times, like the morning grain gift, and like its poured offering you are to sacrifice it, a fire offering of soothing savor for Jehovah. And on the day of the Shabbat, 2 lambs, a year in age, wholly sound, and 2/10 measures of flour for a grain gift mixed with oil, and its poured offering. The Shabbat offering up on its Shabbat, as well as the regular offering up and its poured offering. And on the heads of your new moons you are to bring near an offering up to Jehovah 2 bulls, young of the herd, 1 ram, lambs a year in age, 7, wholly sound, and 3 measures of flour as a grain gift mixed with oil for each 1 bull, and 2/10 measures of flour as a grain gift mixed with oil for each 1 ram, 1/10 each of flour as a grain gift mixed with oil for each 1 lamb, as an offering up, a soothing savor, a fire offering for Jehovah with their poured offerings. 1/2 a hin shall be for the bull, and 1/3 of a hin for the ram, and 1/4 of a hin for the lamb of wine. That is the new monthly offering up on its new moon for the new moons of the year. And 1 hairy goat as a chatat offering for Jehovah, as well as the regular offering up is to be sacrificed, and its poured offering. In the first new moon, on the 14th day after the new moon, is Pesach to Jehovah, and on the 15th day after this new moon, a pilgrimage celebration. For 7 days, matzot are to be eaten. On the first day, a proclamation of holiness. Any kind of servile work is not to be done. You are to bring near a fire offering as an offering up for Jehovah, bulls, young of the herd, 2 and 1 ram, and 7 lambs a year in age. Wholly sound are they to be for you. And their grain gift, flour mixed with oil, 3/10 measures for the bull and 2/10 measures for the ram you are to sacrifice. A tenth measure you are to sacrifice for each 1 lamb for the 7 lambs, and 1 goat as a chatat offering to effect purgation for you, aside from the morning offering up that belongs to the regular offering up. You are to sacrifice these. Like these you are to sacrifice per day for the 7 days as food, a fire offering of soothing savor for Jehovah, along with the regular offering up you are to sacrifice it as its poured offering. Now, on the 7th day, a proclamation of holiness, there is to be for you any kind of servile work you are not to do. And on the day of the first fruits, your bringing near a new grain gift for Jehovah on your feast of weeks, a proclamation of holiness there is to be for you. Any kind of servile work you are not to do. You are to bring near an offering up as a soothing savor for Jehovah, bulls, young of the herd, 2, 1 ram, 7 lambs a year in age, and their grain gift, flour mixed with oil, 3/10 measures for each 1 bull, 2/10 measures for each 1 ram, a tenth measure for each 1 lamb, for the 7 lambs, 1 hairy goat to effect purgation for you, aside from the regular offering up and its grain gift you are to sacrifice. Wholly sound are they to be for you with their poured offerings. And in the 7th new moon, on day 1 of the new moon, a proclamation of holiness there is to be for you. Any kind of servile work you are not to do. A day of horn blasts it is to be for you. You are to sacrifice an offering up as a soothing savor for Jehovah, 1 bull, a young of the herd, 1 ram, lambs a year in age 7, wholly sound, and their grain gift, flour mixed with oil, 3/10 measures per bull, 2/10 measures per ram, 1/10 measure per each lamb, and for the 7 lambs, and 1 hairy goat for a chatat offering to effect purgation for you, aside from the new moon offering up and its grain gift, and the regular offering up and its grain gift, and their poured offerings according to their regulation, as a soothing savor, fire offering for Jehovah. And on the 10th day after this 7th new moon, a proclamation of holiness there is to be for you. You are to afflict yourselves, any kind of work you are not to do. You are to bring near an offering up for Jehovah as a soothing savor, 1 bull, a young of the herd, 1 ram, lambs a year in age 7. Wholly sound shall they be for you, and their grain gift, flour mixed with oil. 3/10 measures per bull, 2/10 measures per each 1 ram, a tenth measure per each 1 lamb, for the 7 lambs, 1 hairy goat for a chatat offering, aside from the chatat offering of atonement, and the regular offerings up, its grain gift, and their poured offerings. And on the 14th day after the 7th new moon, a proclamation of holiness there is to be for you. Any kind of servile work you are not to do. You are to celebrate a pilgrimage festival to Jehovah for 7 days. You are to bring near an offering up, a fire offering, soothing savor for Jehovah, bulls, young of the herd, 13, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound are they to be, and their grain gift, flour mixed with oil, 3/10 measures for each 1 bull of the 13 bulls, 2/10 measures for each 1 ram of the 2 rams, a tenth measure for each 1 lamb for the 14 lambs, and 1 hairy goat as a chatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offerings. And on the second day, bulls, young of the herd, 12, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound, and their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the regulation. And 1 hairy goat as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and their poured offerings. And on the third day, bulls 11, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound, and their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the regulation, and 1 hairy goat as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offering. And on the fourth day, bulls 10, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound, and their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the regulation, and 1 hairy goat as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offering. And on the fifth day, bulls 9, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound, and their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the regulation, and 1 hairy goat as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offering. And on the sixth day, bulls 8, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound, and their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the regulation, and 1 hairy goat as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offering. And on the seventh day, bulls 7, rams 2, lambs a year in age 14, wholly sound, and their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings for the bulls, and for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number, according to the regulation, and 1 hairy goat as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offering. On the eighth day, restraint there is to be for you. Any kind of servile work you are not to do. You are to bring near an offering up, a fire offering of soothing savor for Jehovah. 1 bull, 1 ram, lambs a year in age 7, wholly sound, their grain gift, as well as their poured offerings, for each bull, for each ram, and for the lambs, by their number according to the regulation, and 1 hairy one as a hatat offering, aside from the regular offering up, its grain gift, and its poured offering. These you are to sacrifice to Jehovah at your appointed times, aside from your vow offerings and your free will offerings, whether you offer up of your grain gifts, your poured offerings, or your shalom offerings. So Moshe declared to the children of Israel according to all that Jehovah had commanded Moshe.
I'm good.
All right, we're going to read from the prophets today. This time we're in Jeremiah, verse 1. The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, the priest, that were in Anatoth, in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of Yahweh came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. It came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the carrying away of Jerusalem captive in the 5th month. Then the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the belly, I knew you, and before you came forth from the womb, I sanctified you, and ordained you a prophet to the nations. Then said I, O Yahweh, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child. But Yahweh said to me, Say not, I am a child, and now you shall go to all that I send to you. For whatsoever I command to you shall you speak. Be not afraid of their faces, for I am with you, to deliver you, says Yahweh. Then Yahweh put forth his hand, and touched my mouth, and behold, Yahweh said to me, Behold, I have put my words in your mouth. See, I have this day set you over the nations, and put over nations and over kingdoms, to root out, to pull down, and to destroy, and to throw down, and to build. Moreover, the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Jeremiah, what do you see? And I said, I see a rod of an almond tree. Then said Yahweh to me, You see well, for for I will hasten my word to perform it. And the word of Yahweh came to me a second time, saying, What do you see? And I said, I see a seething pot, and the face thereof is towards the north. Then Yahweh said to me, Out of the north an evil shall break forth upon the inhabitants of the land. For I will call to the families and the kingdoms of the earth, and says Yahweh, and they shall come, and they shall set every one his throne at the entering of the gates of Jerusalem, and against the walls thereof round about, and against the cities of Judah. And I will utter my judgments against them touching their wickedness, who have forsaken me, and burned incense to the gods, and worshipped the works of their own hands. You shall gird up your loins, and arise, and speak to them what I command you. Do not be dismayed of their faces, lest I confound you before them. For behold, I have made you this day a defenced city, an iron pillar, and a brazen walls against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, against the princes thereof, and against the priests thereof, and the people of the land. And they shall fight against you. They shall fight against you, but they shall not prevail against you. For I am with you, says Jehovah, to deliver you. Moreover, the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith Jehovah, Remember you the kindness of your youth, the love of your espousals, when you went after me in the wilderness in a land that was not sown. Israel was holiness unto Yahweh, and the firstfruits of his increase. All that devour him and shall offend, and evil shall come upon them, says Yahweh. Was that a record?
Out of the depths I cry to thee, O Lord, hear my voice, let your ears hearken to my cry. If thou, O Lord, should remember my sins, who could stand? O Lord, my God, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with thee, O Lord, that thou mayest be feared. There is forgiveness with thee, O Lord, that thou mayest be feared. I wait for the Lord my soul waits, and as I wait in his word, I shall put my hope. For the Lord my soul waits, more than the watchman waits for the morning, indeed, more than the watchman waits. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for with him there is love. With him there is full redemption. redemption from all of your sin. Bring unto the Lord your substance, the first fruit of all your increase. Offer it up unto the Lord on the altar of sacrifice. All you have, all you are, comes from God above. Give to Him all your heart in an offering of love. Bring unto the Lord your substance, the first fruit of all your increase. Offer it up unto the Lord on the altar of sacrifice. All you have, all you are, comes from God above. Give to Him all your heart in an offering of love. All you have, all you are, comes from God above. Give to Him all your heart in an offering of love, an offering of love, an offering of love. Oh Lord, I've taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me now. Come quickly rescue me. Your hands, I trust you, for you are my God. Your hands, my days are set as you have numbered. Your hands, I'm safe from those who would pursue me. Let your face shine on me. Let your face shine on me. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Make His face to shine on you. Shine on you. And be gracious to you. Lift His countenance to you. And grant you peace. Oh, how great is your goodness. You've stored up for those that fear you. You bestow in the light of men on those who hide in you. Your hands, I trust in you, for you are my God. Your hands, my days are set as you have numbered. Your hands, I'm safe with those who would pursue. Let your face shine on me. Let your face shine on me. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Make His face to shine on you. Shine on you. can be gracious to you, lift his countenance to you, grant you peace. Love the Lord, all his saints, for the Lord preserves the faithful, while he pays back in full. Be strong of heart and hope in him. In your hands I trust you, for you are my God. Your hands, my days are set as you have numbered. Your hands, I'm safe from those who look to me. Lord, let your face shine on me. Let your face shine on me. Let your face shine on me. You've invited us, O Lord, into the holy place to enjoy your grace and mercy and to see your lovely face. So we bow before your throne as we offer you our praise, longing only to remain here at your feet, O Lord, always, crying, holy is the Lord, worthy to be praised. Holy is the Lord, worthy to be praised. You've invited us, O Lord, into the holy place to enjoy your grace and mercy and to see your lovely face. So we bow before your throne as we offer you our praise, longing only to remain here at your feet, O Lord, always, crying, holy is the Lord, worthy to be praised. Holy is the Lord, worthy By your hand the worlds were cast, stars stretch out beyond our grasp. Echoes ring from distant suns, and all of this is yours. We strain our lives to touch it all, set our eyes for distant shores, all the while deny the call that we ourselves are yours. Songs set forth the laws of life, spark the sounds that gave us light, set to move the spinning oars, and all of this is yours. Yet still we seek the answers born where risks of faith can be ignored, refuse to hear the silent truth that we ourselves are yours. Stuff of stars we cannot see, only you hold the key. Bend our thought to find the source, and all of this is yours. Our thoughts rebound, conviction calls, it's time we learn our purpose born. Turn our ears to hear the call that we ourselves are yours.
All right.
Can we hear you?
All right. Do we have sound?
I believe we do.
Great. Do we have quality sound?
Yeah, that's the question.
See with the delay.
Yeah, it's going to be a delay there. It's hot. It's loud. It's working. I think I have all the settings right.
Okay.
I don't know if it's working or not. Wow. So you gave me a notebook to write
I
on.
did.
And I followed notes and I made comments.
Good. Yeah,
in the chats.
I didn't exactly use it all.
Well, you did. You did good. You followed. It was encouraging because I know when we got about halfway through, I'm like, okay, we're about halfway through.
Yeah. You're terrible.
I don't know if they heard it say that. As you see the lag, you can see. I mean, I'm doing live here on my screen, so I haven't even sat down yet. See over here, check it out. I haven't even sat down yet, so they haven't even heard us talk yet.
Okay.
So, but they will. Scary.
Boy, that's a tremendous lag.
It is. It's a minute, and that's one of the real quickly. Yeah, you're there, and I'm not there yet. That's one of the reasons why we have good quality, because what they take, the YouTube takes my little feed, low resolution shot, takes it and runs it through their computers, puts it into high definition. It's not like they redo it, but they format it, and then they send it out in these different formats.
Okay, so that's part.
That's why we have the lag.
Okay.
If they didn't have no lag, it would be the same quality as we had with live stream.
Gotcha.
Whatever my resolution on my camera, whatever my internet was capable of sending out, but it would be a 3 or 4 second lag, which was really good with chat, and having this dialogue was
Right.
that I could say, how are y'all doing out there? And then instantly somebody would say, we're doing fine. So it helped in conversation.
It does. Okay.
And so-
Okay, so we're just going to have to remember that we are
That's right.
in parallel
And
universes.
we can't ask a question and sit here and wait for a minute, wait for it. So you're going to see in a minute the chat going up saying, oh, I hear y'all fine.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
So
quality
now
sound.
you guys know
You got quality
the rest
sound.
of the story from the production
Right.
standpoint here in St. Francisville.
And that's just,
Right.
so it's a plus and a minus. But
That's right.
so I'm going to tie that in with your teaching. So what are we doing wrong? Is there a sin there that we did that causes this lag? Anything bad that happens, there's got to be a reason, right?
No.
That ain't the way it works?
Lag can be good time because it can give you time to think and consider your ways.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, so lag time can be good.
Okay. So, yeah, you could say something and go, well, of course you can't take it back.
No, you can't take it back, but it gives you a whole lot
Okay.
more time to consider before you open your mouth.
That's right.
Kind of like,
That's right.
that's one of the things if Japheth would have done that, with his daughter, but he says, oh, yeah, the first thing that comes out of my house, I'm going to offer it to God for Thanksgiving and all of that. And it's like, well, if he would have had a little bit of thought there and a little restraint, he could have really specified more of what he wanted to offer as, a sign of his thanksgiving and a
Wow.
sign of his gratitude.
Wow. So your teaching and the title really interests me because it's one of my favorite subjects. Although I don't look at it historically too often. I look at it in the news today. I'm always reminded of where the hurricane hit.
Right.
What happened? And there's always going to be people on the internet saying, well, it's because they did this and it's because they did that. And I'm like, oh no.
Right.
And you started out saying basically there is no. Let's see if I wrote it down here. We want answers, and God is not a magic operator. Basically, what I was. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, we do it with the God complex. We want
Yeah.
to assign all responsibility to God, and a lot of times
To bail us out.
right, to bail us out, but also to reason as far as reasons why we want to always
Okay.
blame God, and God is not always the culprit. Now maybe His laws and the way that He made the universe is the culprit, but those are just naturally occurring things.
Things that happen.
Sometimes we can adapt to it and we can learn to function within it so that we're better, we're happier, we're more stable and adjusted. Other times, like with accidents, you're never going to have 100% where there are no accidents. But what you can do is through education, through training, you can mitigate those accidents so that they don't occur so frequently.
I got you.
So
You
you
can
limit-
avoid. And if I can relate to what you're saying there, with my children growing up, I have my two oldest children are boys, and I knew that they were going to drive and go out and have prom night parties and stuff. We're in the world, so to speak, I guess you could say. And so I knew growing up that I had some close friends that had accidents growing up, and some of them didn't make it. There was
Right.
it seemed like
Very
not
sad.
everybody that was born made it to adulthood.
Very true.
And I wanted my children to make it to adulthood and have a chance, So I was always telling them, look, watch out what you do, how you do it. Be careful. Don't drink and drive. I pushed that in there. Don't do it. A lot of people are going to do it and so forth. Well, long story short, they've gotten older now and they're adults, and I feel like I'm successful in that area.
Right.
But what you're saying is that the laws of nature, the universe, has something to do with it. Even though I taught my children right, I didn't always teach them biblical things,
Right.
how to memorize scriptures and so forth.
Well,
That's
and
not what happened there.
There's a lot of truth that isn't even in the Bible.
There you go.
And one of the things when I'm discussing scripture or religious ideas with atheists or those people that are kind of challenging their faith, I find that there is this assumption or this desire where they think that the Torah, because God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, that somehow the Torah should have given ancient Israel all knowledge. And so it should have told Israel everything. And that's really not at all what God does. Not at all. He leaves so much for us to discover, so much for us to find for ourselves. And I'm very grateful for that, because there is a joy in discovery. There's a joy in learning it and seeking it for yourself.
The guidelines.
But what he did do with the Torah, he didn't overthrow an already established society, an already functioning world society, but he sought to place constraints within that system to afford righteousness and justice. That doesn't mean like today, for instance, the big taboo issue, of course, that we deal with today is slavery.
Okay.
Ancient Israel's law code allowed slavery, both within its own population as well as from populations from other nations. But today we don't have that.
Right.
So does that mean that if we're going to follow the biblical code that we have to have slavery? And the answer is no. We do not have to have slavery. And I argue in my book, which I think Dave was showing, I guess it's still there. I argue in my book that the whole entire point of the Jubilees and the economic system that Jehovah gave to ancient Israel is that when that system is followed, it totally eliminates slavery.
Wow.
So it takes us...
Everybody's free then.
It does. And rather than doing, say, in 70 or 140 years in ancient Israel what could have been done, it's taken us to what, the 1820s. Slavery was abolished in England in the 1820s,
right.
1840s.
Slavery in the sense that we
modern slavery, right?
Yeah.
And then
in capturing more than slavery.
Right, slavery definitely exists.
Right.
But it's not something that people want to talk about or acknowledge.
I got you.
And the human trafficking is just horrific when you look at the statistics. But as far as a nation embracing that in their law code and allowing it to function as an economic part of their society, it's taken us almost 2,000 years to come to a point that could have been realized within 70 or 140 years in ancient Israel times had they followed the covenant code.
That's right. That's right.
So
follow the rules to the T. Now, how far do we take that? I mean, I understand a lot of what you talked about this morning was about the nation of Israel. Not so much on the individual level, although there are some things in there, accidents and, I wrote down notes. But for the most part, I think I got that it was the nation. It's the government set up, how a nation can
nations are made up of people. They're made up of individuals. It counts because when individuals decline from righteousness, the nation will decline from righteousness.
Wow.
When individuals uphold righteousness, then they can become complacent. But if they are following their God-given instructions, they're not going to become complacent. They're going to be very vocal. They're going to be very active. Right. And they are going to pursue things and support things that are in their own self-interest, and the righteousness that Torah established is indeed in their own self-interest. So there was a question as to what time it is. I think they want to see exactly what the lag is.
No, it's a minute. It's a good minute.
Yeah, so right now it is 12:56, and it's probably going to be 12:57.
I don't have a second hand on this thing. There's about a minute lag there.
Right, a good minute.
I don't know how you, unless you just held up a clock,
Right. Okay, so Zion's Girl asks a question. Is there anything specific we are needing to do to end the diaspora? I think that we are doing it. I think as much as we can educate.
What got them in the dispersion? What got us into that?
Well, it was declining from the law.
That's the answer to the question.
Right. Oppression got us here. Not sanctifying the Shabbat, not following the covenants. So I think as more and more of us take hold of the covenant to do it. Isaiah 63:7 has a command, and I think you guys see me typing this all the time, but Isaiah tells us, he said, give Yahovah no rest, give him no peace. In Egypt it says that they cried out because of their oppression. They cried out day and night saying, God, deliver us. God, restore your covenants. Fulfill your promises. I think we have to do the same thing. We cannot give God any peace. We have to remind him of his covenants, remind him of his promises, and say, hey, fulfill it. Keep your word. Sanctify your name. Do these things.
Again, we have the idea that it is an individual thing to do, but we have to do it corporately. We have to do it as a group.
We do.
So, nations. So, we live in America. That's a big country. It's just, to me, my head boggles when, okay, are we supposed to get this whole nation, the government and everything restructured and so on and so forth? I think not.
No.
I'm just
right.
I don't know.
The whole reason.
There's a nation over there called Israel that's much smaller, much more capable of doing what you're doing. It's already set up. It's already set up.
Well, and a lot of people, with the politically correct discussions that are going on now, you have the discussion in America of, you're all immigrants, you displaced the Native Americans. Well, the same discussion is in Israel, because Israel displaced the Native Canaanites. But you look at it, what was the purpose? And what we find, whether people were in Egypt or Mesopotamia, and they needed a secure haven, they needed a place, a sanctuary, and a heaven of peace, or whether you had your European pilgrims coming to America, it's really the same idea in that God gave the land. They gave the land of Israel to the patriarchs, to the ancient nation, so that they could freely establish this way of life that developed in peace, that allowed prosperity, and it disallowed oppression. So the whole thing was so that they could sanctify the covenant. You cannot fully keep the covenant in another nation.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible.
And so the whole entire point was to allow Israel the freedom to do that.
Yeah. And I see from reading your teaching and what I already know and such, that these laws or these commandments, if you want to use that word, they aren't hard to do. They're not they're not real strict. When I'm trying to get at this, I'm trying to get to the point is that what they have, the Sharia law.
Oh, right.
The Muslim people have, that they want the whole world to be a part of. Man, those are some pretty strict things. That,
very really, oppressive.
Really oppressive is a better word.
Very oppressive and repressive.
Over and over and over. And over
in every way.
And, or you lose your head, so to speak. You don't do it. So the Torah doesn't teach that. The Torah has a lot. So I'm not scared so much of teaching. Or even telling some of my friends, look, this if the world did this, it would be a better place.
Right. It's interesting because Islam does indeed embrace a lot of the teachings of Torah, and that is part of their scripture. But what's fascinating is that the Torah disallows, I believe it's called din. I forgot the Muslim word, dignary, something like that, where when there is a crime that is committed, rather than life going for life, as Torah commands, you're able to pay a fee, pay basically almost a bribe, and you can get out. It's a get out of jail card, and so that is allowed.
If you have money, you can
and that's allowed in all Eastern cultures. But the Torah is different in that because it sees that you can kill someone, pay a fee, and get out of jail. So it perverts justice in that system and in that law. So you might look at Torah as having the harsher law code or having a harsher sentence, but it preserves the integrity, it preserves the intellect and the righteousness of that society, so it's not perverted.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about equality. If we're all only worth half a shekel or whatever it is, there you go.
Right.
That's the thing. You did mention some of that about bribery in government offices that can't take gifts and so forth. That's a real problem. Not only in government, but just in the little ministry we have here. We have people that have given us gifts before, and then and sometimes it's like a true gift. Other times it's like it's a controlling gift.
Right.
They want to give something, but they want to have a hand. And I understand that. That's just natural.
It is. It's
But
human
I've
nature.
had to learn on some aspects of receiving gifts that I have to be able to not hold on to that gift. That person gave that to me. I have to find out what that person wants, and I want to please that person.
Right.
I've had to learn to actually take a gift and then say, okay, this is a tool. This is a gift.
Right.
I need to use it, the way I think it needs to be used. They might not see it that way.
Right.
So it's a
Right,
hard
there
deal.
is.
My point is that so government you can't what do we call it in this country where they have people go up and try to talk to the politicians and the
A lobbyist.
lobbyists.
Right.
They do lobbying. So you were saying basically that lobbying, if I understood this right, is okay. It just can't be with a gift. I mean, we have to have
Right.
representatives.
Well, it functioned differently in Israel because your lobbying and your advocates would have been able to do that from themselves. And I really do not see, because lobbying itself, and there's lots of good books out there on it, it really perverts as well.
It can.
It really does,
For sure.
because you may not be giving gifts, but you're giving favors. So, I'll do this for you. I'll vote this way here if you vote this way here for me. So that's kind of still does the same thing. What was unique about Israel's society, when you had the feasts, you find that during the feast, Israel actually conducted legislative agendas where every land-holding citizen in the nation came and participated. So, yes, you had some elders that represented you. It was called the Adah, and the Adah functioned kind of as a Congress where they made decisions or policies on different laws affecting the nation. But you find that you were always represented at the national holidays. So never could it helped to eliminate and help to thwart the political overreach, where politicians are so disconnected from their constituents, and it also helped to eliminate other interests that were not on the land from taking precedent. Today, there's this whole argument about big business, and how they're able to either throw money or their political favors around to get their agendas passed, even when it's shown to be harmful to the American people. So there were safeguards within the Torah that prevented some of those situations from happening. Not that it's immune. Everything is always based on the righteousness and morality of the people. So it comes back to the individual and the individual family, but nations are made up of individual families.
I think I'm going to be stuck on that issue for another 5 years, the individual versus nation thing. It's a tough one in my mind to figure out. I think it's simply, just a matter of I'm responsible for me. I need to do my best to help others, be responsible for themselves. I don't know how to form a government. Now, I was leading into this question. Now we have the government. Israel has its government at the present day, right now. How close do you think they are to getting there? I mean, because somebody asked the question, what do we have to do to end the dispersal?
Diaspora. Israel definitely is not there. What would it take for Israel to get there? They're going to have to start implementing the Torah precepts. I've had friends that have lived in Israel, and they've talked about how heavy-handed sometimes the national security is.
There's politics there.
Well, there's politics, but then sometimes people are investigated unjustly. Sometimes they're held in jails, or their businesses are made inactive, or different things because they dissented some political thing, and that's something that Torah very much
they had
opposes.
a grandfather that believes such and such way.
Exactly, exactly, or maybe
long-term deals,
or even like the Karaites. They're a group that is notoriously discriminated against and not seen legitimate in any way, and they're very much policies that go against them. So there was righteousness and justice established for families on the land. And today it would take Israel implementing those things It says, had you followed my ways, your peace would be as a river. If Israel, if the covenants, this is what it came down for me, if the covenants are still valid, we still see the same cause and effect happening today that we did anciently.
Okay.
If the laws of nature have not changed, in fact, Jeremiah says, as long as springtime and harvest, summer and winter, daytime and nighttime, as long as those ordinances are before me, he says, only then will things change. It actually says, only then will I not take the seed of Jacob to be leaders before me. But the point is the fact that things still occur, natural law still works today, the same as it did 3,000 years ago.
Gotcha.
And so if we still see that cause and effect, if we still see Israel facing terrorist activities, we still see the nation of Israel facing wars and hatred. It says people will love you, people will seek your peace. That's the blessing of the law. So if these things are not happening, then they're not following the law because they're not doing the things that make it happen. So.
So there's a long way to go there.
Right, there really is.
But they as a nation are much closer to what we're talking about because they are the nation we're talking about here. I think one of the things that would help us Americans that were raised mostly Christian, we want to do something about this. We want to have an effect. I personally look into the laws that the land of Israel has set up for immigration and how to join in there and maybe find a way to be useful there. So they'll ask you to be a citizen there to get citizenship. I've had friends. We all had one close friend that just spent a small fortune, trying to gain citizenship. He's basically thrown his hands up at this point and said, "Nah, forget it. They don't want me. I don't want to be there."
Right.
He's gotten pretty frustrated there.
And when we discuss immigration and citizenship, there were certain provisions in ancient Israel. Ancient Israel was freely open to the ger, the convert. But as far as living on the land, there were some stipulations and provisions. First, remember, all the countryside, the rural countryside, belonged to somebody. So there wasn't this free land where you could just come in and live unless you lived in the city. But then if you moved to the city, you faced increased real estate prices. So it would be very hard to make it there, but you could work as a worker on the land and hope that eventually you could assimilate through that process of working for somebody else on the land. So there were, you did have the ability to do that, but there were protections and safeguards that protected the people of the land. When you study world history, one of the things that you see is that civilizations collapse based on massive waves of immigration.
That's right.
Egypt, you have the first intermediate period and the second intermediate period because of one reason, and only really one reason. Egypt didn't face famine during this time. Egypt really didn't have any political strife as far as the pharaoh or the monarchy was concerned. The strife and the political instability occurred by massive waves of immigrants coming into the land because there were famines in other places, and it drove them into Egypt.
So what I could take from that is that actually the best thing for me personally to do as an individual is to try to support the nation of Israel from here, and try to get my country to support them to be, the guardian that they're supposed to be.
Yes, but I really.
But I want to move over there and be a citizen.
Right.
I can't do it though.
No, you can't. You can't. Well, and I see that we're all basically, it's like, calling God right now, and He's placed us all on hold for the moment. At some point in the time, if we make enough noise and we cry out to Him, as Israel did in Egypt, He's going to take off that hold button and answer this phone call, and there will be deliverance. I mean, the deliverance of Israel latter day is not man-made. It is not something we do. It is something that He does.
That's a big question. What do I do? What do we do? What can we do?
The most we can do right now is what we are doing. I think talking to people, educating people, Each of us has like our own little ministry. I mean,
Sure.
Steve Matthew has his little ministry. Ross has his ministry. I have things that
It
I'm
might
doing.
just be calling your neighbor,
Right.
keeping in
Well,
touch with your neighbor.
It can be keeping. It can be
Yeah,
doing a kind act. When when people lament the place where our nation is today, and they see the consequences unfolding, or maybe they're being personally affected, then teach them. It says, what is Israel to be? We are to be priests, a kingdom of priests, to teach the nations the law. So when these situations occur, it's an opportunity to teach people, well, this is the solution Torah has. Well, this is what God has shown us, the way wherein we should walk. And this is how it either prevents or this is how it solves this situation that we're dealing with right now. So much of our national turmoil can really be an opportunity for us to share a Torah message and to educate a populace. Knowing when is the right time to share and when is the right time to hold back. A lot of that, comes through wisdom and people's skills. But we have the ability to plant seeds. We can always encourage each other. Always encourage each other. And the national deliverance, though, and this really comes down to the whole validity issues with God and does He exist? For Israel, they knew He had existed when He brought them out of Egypt, because of what they saw Him do in Egypt.
Yeah.
They saw the plagues. They saw the crossing of the sea. They saw these miraculous things, the cloud by day and the pillar of fire. So they lived through, and they could share that with their children. I do believe that we will be given that same story or a similar story. I don't ever see
sideways rapture, in other words.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
That's kind of what I was getting at as far as going back to the land.
Right, and it's something that we can do, but if we go there before God establishes it,
right,
then we will not be living underneath what we want out of the land that He establishes. In other words, we won't be living under those laws and that constitution that prevents oppression. We won't be living under that God-given freedom from the house of bondage, because right now the state of Israel is not following it. So, for people like me, I'm very comfortable with waiting on Jehovah and saying,
save your pennies and go over there and visit it occasionally.
Yeah, like I'm doing in November. I'm going to go visit.
That's what
but
we have to do. I was against all that. Just
exactly.
Against all that touring and everything. That's a lot of money. It's $5,000 to go spend a week, and I'm like, no. Save your money up and become a citizen. Well, that didn't work either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, if you are a citizen, again, you are not a citizen of a biblical idea of Israel.
Too.
Yes, you can be asked to leave very, very quickly. But it's the idea that waiting on God to establish it, but giving Him no peace till He does.
Right.
There's a correlation. If we want it, if you want something bad enough, you're going to seek it, and you're going to be on that phone to God all the time. And what happens when your air conditioning goes out? Yeah. You're on with that repairman. When can you get over here? This is really uncomfortable. Please come and fix this. Yeah. But do we do the same thing with God?
I don't know, man. I got a friend that's always calling me, but I never answer the phone. I just got tired of it. I think that's what you're saying here.
Right.
He called. But he never was anything important.
But what did that friend offer you that made it worth your time? See, exactly. We have to offer God something that makes it worth His time.
He's got to want to pick up that phone.
That's right.
I got you.
And how do we do that? How do we convince Him? How do we make our case that we are not our forefathers?
I got you.
How do we make the case that we're not going to go astray, and we're not going to, after He invests all this time, all this energy, He does all this for us, how are we going to show that, hey, we're ready, and we're ready to get it right. We're ready to learn from our history and to do it right this time.
And then at the same time, we're not always, needy.
Right.
Be less needy.
Self-reliant.
I want to be less needy. I mean, I know some of my best friends because they're not so needy, and I know I'm one of their friends because I'm not always needy with them. And we do have a lot of conversation. We do talk.
Right. You have something that's mutually you're able to exchange, and there's give and take.
Yeah, and more importantly, I know that if they're calling, it's important.
Right.
You know, because I know we don't talk a lot, but
Right.
I'm just trying to get back to my friend that's always calling me. Well, I mean, a couple of times he broke down or something, and I didn't answer the phone.
Right. Right.
You know?
Right.
So yeah, I don't know how I'm putting 2 to 2 and coming up with
But
6 here.
the idea that I think it depends. Are we always coming?
What can we do?
Well, and I don't know that there's any prohibition about coming to God for even your
No.
even things in your life. I mean, just talking with Him and having that relationship.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I think when it comes to a national restoration and a national reestablishment of a covenant, then I think that is something where we call out on a national level where we're all pleading for the same thing: restore the covenants, and that has to be our unified cry. You made these promises to our forefathers. You made these promises. Please restore. Please remember. The promise. If you look at, let me go to Leviticus.
Sure,
This is going to be.
I have no problem with dead air here. You need to take some time to do that because I'm just going to catch up with the chat a little bit, and this is not.
Leviticus 26:43.
Sure.
It talks about the land being left of Israel, and this is after Israel has gone through diaspora. So this is again this parallels Deuteronomy 30, where Israel returns to land after the blessing and the cursing are coming upon you. So this is Israel's future. This is our future that is in store for us. And this is God's promise that we can very, like a attorney in a trial. We can remind God of this, and we can very graciously remind Him of this promise. And this is Leviticus 26, verse 44. And in the covenant it states, "And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them, for I am Yahweh your God. But I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their God, for I am Jehovah."
Wow.
So it doesn't matter what we've been, it doesn't matter who we've been, it doesn't matter where we've been. If we claim and we hold on to Torah, we do it, we live it, He will return to us. What does He say? Return to me and I will return to you. There's all these promises. We just have to do it. The question is, how many of us have to do it for God to notice? And I don't know that that's something we need to worry about.
What specifically does that mean? And I think you've done quite well with teaching what that specifically, what are these covenants are or not, such as some of the verses in the Torah about God not even hearing their prayers because they worship other gods and so forth, or they eat the wrong foods, or however you want to do it. So what are the mechanics here? I mean, that's what I wanted you to teach me this morning. Is what specific verse can I quote to get everything I need? I mean,
well, there really isn't a one verse.
That's extreme.
Yeah, no, sorry, you're not going to get out of it that easy, right?
I think you get the point. You had friends say, teach me to pray, whatever.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
We don't want a magical pill.
Torah is holistic.
Okay.
It speaks to the physical well-being of what you put into your body.
You got to take everything and.
Right. It speaks to the spiritual well-being, and believe it or not, as far as a spiritual relationship with God, oppression is key to that, because if you're oppressing someone, He is not going to hear you if you are oppressing someone else. So injustice is very much key to that. And I think the example that really illustrates this best, there are so many women out there in abusive relationships where the husband says, "Oh, I love you, and she believes him for years and years.
Sure.
The abuse goes on. Talk is cheap. What does that type of love mean? Real love is always based on justice.
Right.
So in a healthy marriage and in a healthy relationship, that husband and that wife are going to be looking out for each other's best interest. They're going to build each other up, and they're not going to oppress each other.
Yeah.
It starts in the home. This idea of freedom, this idea of liberty, and this idea of freedom from oppression begins in the home. And then the children learn, and they're educated in the way, and then it goes out from there.
It's family to nation. Oh,
Right, exactly. So
I'm trying to get that connection there. I gotta have the individual,
exactly,
versus the nation thing, because
right.
But it's one thing to get myself right, which is tough to do. It's hard to do. My gosh, I'm trying to get my whole nation together.
Well, and that's not our job to get the whole nation. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, that's not our job. Not
it's
our
a good
task.
thing, huh?
Exactly. But what we can do is we can share. The more people that are on board, the more there are people standing up for your rights and your freedoms.
Because I really do believe that God can put people there that can do that stuff.
Absolutely.
Ignite
a fire and start a
that would
trend.
be like a Messiah type,
Possibly. Well, look at what Martin Luther King did.
Sure.
Look at what he did, and look at his legacy that he did.
It's still alive.
Very much so. And there's so many people, not just African Americans, that are grateful for it, but it opened the door for all minorities and for all oppressed people. So it really doesn't matter. The concepts are universal, but again, it is not something that is limited just because you're a native-born citizen. The precepts and the teachings of Torah, the holistic approach, benefits the entire society. So
it takes a bunch of us to make a village, so to speak. In other words, we have to do our little part.
Well, the problem with the take a village.
How do we find our parts, though?
Yeah, the problem with the take a village aspect is that it interjects ideas that are not necessarily Torah ideas.
Well, I think that's kind of one of the issues with this country right now, is that we have a lot of ideas about how to do things, and they're not all that correct.
Right.
Of late, especially.
Right. And Charlene makes a great point. Leviticus 26 is talking about a national level. The restoration and the restoration of the covenants is not restoring covenants to an individual. It's not like, all right, Dave, I'm going to go out and I'm going to give you health and I'm going to make a nation out of you.
Right.
That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the people, the descendants of those that have been deported from the land. These children, Deuteronomy 28 talks about us like waking up. It says, the generation to come of your children, those that be born of you, will see all the diseases and all the curses that I've placed on this land, and they will say, why is this land a barren wilderness? You look at the land of Israel like in the 1920s and the 1930s, you're going, why are you wanting to live here? I mean, it was a true desert. But you look at it now, and that's the promise of Deuteronomy 28. It says that like overnight, the desert shall become a fruited plain.
Can a nation be born in a day?
Exactly, exactly. So that is our hope, but it is at a national level, and it's a worldwide restoration that sanctifies God. I mean, what is to separate Him from all the other competing gods and competing ideas in the world? It has to be something that He does, whereby we know He exists and we know it is Him, and we know there's no other deity.
Wow.
So
you wrote a book on that?
Yeah, actually I did.
It's a quite nice looking book too. I was looking at it today. The last I saw you had the workbook. I don't know what do you call them.
The little folders, the spiral bound.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, this is lovely. But now I see the hardback book you brought in today, and I'm like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I brought that in because I thought I might even be referring to it because, believe it or not, I mean, things are organized based on concepts. So I'm always referring to it because
that's what you wrote it for.
Yeah, because
you didn't write it for everybody else. You wrote it for yourself.
Well, I wrote it for myself, but I had taken a vow.
That's what's great about the parts. I haven't read the whole thing, but it does explain that this is why you wrote this book.
Exactly. But
this quest.
What I don't put in the book is that I did take a vow, and it was whatever if God would show me what His precepts were and the meaning of what is written in Scripture, that I would share it with the house of Israel. So that was the reason that we put all the effort and did everything to get the book out, because the old adage, you hide your light under a can, under a bushel, it does no good. But if it can spark the hearts and minds of the people,
straight out of the Torah too. I mean, this is new under the sun here. This is not a direct, speeches from God to Jodell to write this down. And
I don't know about that.
This is straight out of the Torah.
It was very much. I'm trying to reignite what is called the contextual approach.
Yeah.
William Hallow, James Hoffmeyer, and many other scholars have championed it, and it brings sanity to religion, because without it, religion just becomes this thing where any nice charismatic leader can make it into whatever they want, and everybody just kind of goes like sheep following them. So, but when it comes down to the text, and you always have to be held accountable to that text, it's something that not even God Himself can deviate from.
What I liked about it was it had the big picture. And that's a major problem with what you refer to, as I refer to as charismatic false leaders, where they really don't have a big picture here. They have a small game that it's usually something lying in their pockets or whatever, you name it, a bigger building or whatever, but the big picture is never there.
Right.
And I think
the big picture with this is something that benefits none of us individually per se, but it benefits everyone nationally, in that it is the redemption and the restoration of a nation to that promised heritage.
Okay.
And so it's something very beneficial.
Wow.
So while it is 1:30, I should probably think about getting back home to my family. Yes,
I don't know. They let you go. You got to come back to them.
I know.
Did they give you a deadline?
Thankfully, no.
Jodell was telling this morning, what was it, 15 hours?
Yes. I was telling Dave this morning that the last 12 hours have been almost a very spiritual experience for me, because I was completely alone.
You almost got bored.
No boredom. No, I was studying Scripture. I was loving it. But yes, completely alone in my hotel room and just studying Scripture. And what you find, and you're able, all those thoughts that come into your mind of, well, what about this or what about this, when you're thinking of it, when you're at home and you're interrupted with questions or different things that go around, there's no interruption.
Mommy, I'm hungry.
Yeah, and you're able to just take it to its natural conclusion, and it was very wonderful.
Yeah.
So, but I do miss my family.
Yeah.
And, I do.
I'm sure they miss you by now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Ross will be back next week.
Yes.
He's going to be all beaming from his trip.
He will be.
He's had a blast over there. I don't know if everybody here has been involved with his photographs on Facebook, but there's some pretty good pictures going on. It's the first time Ross has been there that I know of when he didn't have a strict tour to go on. He was just able to roam wild and do whatever stuff, which is what I always wanted to do there. So
I know.
Great.
I would love to do that as well.
But we usually do the priestly blessings and all that stuff, and that's not necessary.
Well, let's go ahead and do that.
I mean,
stick with tradition.
You can. I'll let you do it. How's that?
Right.
It's not that I'm against all that. I just don't have all the resources.
Michael Farmer asked about a Kindle edition of the book.
Sure.
Actually, yes, they started on the Kindle edition of the book yesterday. It will be available in Kindle as well as in eNook. Is that right? Whatever the version is in for Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
So we are working on it. I was told it would be done in about 5 days, but because it's so detailed, what gets all of the conversion processes, no matter what they are all the tables. I have I think it's 63 tables in the book, and those are very tedious. And then I've got to go back through and verify and make sure that they did the conversion correctly. So I'm going to be busy on that this week.
Did you learn how to write a book, Jodell?
I don't know that I learned, but I did it. Whether I knew it or not, I did it. So.
While you're looking that up, this is a thick book, and this is not large print either. So yeah, that's a book.
All right, refresh my memory because I'm dependent on this. Where priestly blessing is.
That's what I was going to say. I don't even know what it is. Okay. Ross or Glenn always has it boom up on their screen, and I'm like, I don't even have a search engine open up here. I'm monitoring.
I'm terrible in that I have become totally dependent. Like I used to know a lot of exactly where texts were, and have your Rolodex Bible in your mind. Well, over the last probably 12 years since I've been researching, I have become totally dependent on Bible programs because, and I know the key phrases, so I just always depend on the key phrases.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Okay, so here it is, Leviticus 6. No, this is not it. Let me go down here. Yes, we're going to have a little bit of dead air here.
It's okay. We have lag. We have lag.
All right, so Leviticus 6:22. May Yahovah bless you and keep you. May Yahovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And Yahweh turn his face towards you and give you peace. So shall they put my name on the Israelites, and I will bless them.
We make our guests work here.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Hey, this is a group effort, a national effort.
Although I don't really consider you a guest because you're a part of the team here. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you guys on chat again next week.
That's right. And if you keep, we're learning that people like to continue on chatting, but don't refresh your browser or you'll lose the chat.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
right.
the main thing. If you refresh it, it's gone.
Yeah, it is gone.
Rebound conviction calls. It's time we learn our purpose born. Turn our ears to hear the call that we ourselves are yours.